Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today.
Billy, we've had some devastating storms lately. Tornadoes.
Yep.
We've had ice storms. I know we've had flooding. We've had, you name it. We seem to have these weather events that keep happening and occurring. And so it's something that, woodland owners are going to need to know, what can we do, because it's affecting people out there.
You're totally right, Renee. And we're fortunate today to have a couple of guests on that can help us kind of sort through some of that information and content. Natural disasters are, it's an occurrence that we're just going to have to deal with. And certainly woodland owners, farmers, and others have to deal with them all the time. Fortunately, there are sometimes some programs and other things that can kind of help people recover from the disasters that they experience. So today we're going to have, really excited, a first timer in Lindsey New. I know, always excited to get a first time guest on here, but Lindsey is going to be talking a little bit about this program. She's the County Executive Director for Farm Service Agency based out of Pulaski County, but she's going to be talking about this program where we had some of those tornadoes down in Pulaski and Laurel County, and they have been working really hard. She's been working really close with John Schultz, and John's been on here a lot. He's our state forester for NRCS, and they're going to be talking about this new program. So they've been working on getting it ready, getting it to roll out. So we're trying to help spread the word about this opportunity, but she'll give us some information about how this whole process comes about as well. And then we're going to have Dr. Ellen Crocker with a new edition of What's Bugging My Tree. So always excited to have Dr. Crocker on us, but really excited to have these guests on today. Certainly appreciate Lindsey and John being with us, as well as Ellen. But if you all have questions for our presenters today, please use the chat function. If you're on YouTube or you're a podcast listener, thank you. And we would love to interact with you as well. And you can interact with us via email at forestry.extension@uky.edu, and we can respond with you that way. But Renee, glad to be with you on this kind of overcast day here in Lexington, nice and warm. For all of those that are going to be joining us at the Woodland Owner Short Course in Pendleton County, we look forward to seeing you all on Saturday, but I'm excited to get started with today's show.
Yes, exactly. So let's go ahead and get started. Lindsey, if you'd like to turn your camera on. So Lindsey and John, welcome to the show. We really appreciate it. Like I said, Billy's really excited for a new first time.
Yeah. We're always trying to grow the audience, Lindsey, and we're glad to have you as a first-time guest. I know John's been with us many times over the years, but it's glad to have both y'all with us.
Yeah. Thank you for the invitation.
So tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about today. I know it might be for one specific incident, but yet we're also, this could help down the road for other things as well.
Sure. So the Emergency Forest Restoration Program, FSA loves acronyms, so we refer to it as EFRP. It's been around as we know it today since around the 2008 Farm Bill, but it's only implemented sort of upon request when there is a catastrophic event like the tornado we're dealing with here. So today I'll give kind of an overview of the program as a whole, and then also some specifics about our sign up in response to the tornado.
Nice. Looking forward to it.
Yes, I'm so glad to have you all with us today. Really, thank you.
Thank you. And as mentioned, I'm happy to have John Schultz with the NRCS. He works out of the Kentucky State Office as a state forester, and the NRCS works closely with FSA for this program. So we're going to sort of divide this up into two sections. Today, we want to cover the EFRP program as a whole, talking about the cost share components of that program, some of the particular practices, the application process, the technical assistance that's provided through the outside agencies beyond FSA, and then sort of the reporting and follow-up requirements for landowners who choose to participate in the program. EFRP is a cost share program. It provides payments to eligible owners of non-industrial private forest land to carry out practices that are going to restore the land destroyed by natural disaster. Some of the types of disaster damage that the program can address: drought, hurricane, ice storm, flood, as we're dealing with now, tornado, wildfire, and insect infestation. Land that can be enrolled must be non-industrial private forest land. So we're working typically with individual landowners that had existing tree cover before the natural disaster. As with our tornado event now, some of those areas have very little tree cover remaining. but they had to have existing tree cover at the time of the disaster, be owned by non-industrial private individuals, groups, corporations. We're seeing a lot of trusts and so forth as landowners participating. And the land has to be physically located in a county that's authorized to implement the program. The cost share payments the program offers are based on 75% of the cost to implement the approved practices, and the practices come through the recommendations of the forester. And that's what John will describe in detail a little bit later. There is a cap for the program of $500,000 per person per disaster. And so that tells you the scale of this can go pretty large. The minimum cost of restoration is $1,000 per participant. So the EFRP is not, it's not a guaranteed benefit for everyone. It's really just supposed to serve where the damage is so catastrophic that federal assistance would be required. It doesn't really fall into the entitlement program categories that some of FSA's offerings. Your county committee is going to oversee most of the program and look at what eligible forest restoration practices they wish to have implemented in response to that disaster. So some of the practices that are available just in general, and again, speaking outside of just a tornado, you could be looking at debris removal, down or damaged trees. Natural regeneration is often used instead of planting. However, site prep, planting, and labor to replant forests would be eligible for cost share under the program. Prescribed burning, fire breaks, fuel breaks, restoration of forest land roads, and stream crossings, erosion control structures. A lot of the program's goals include access, safe access to the property so that the reforestation practices can then be implemented. Fencing is an eligible cost share program under EFRP when the fence existed prior to the disaster and it's needed to exclude livestock from the forested areas. And then in some cases, wildlife enhancements may be eligible if the forester sees that they're needed. So just to kind of explain what happens when a disaster occurs, how this program could be implemented in your area if you are affected by an eligible natural disaster. USDA has a county emergency board in each service area, and we have representatives from FSA, NRCS, Forest Service, Rural Development. Our extension agents are often involved in those meetings, and anytime a disaster occurs of any sort, that committee convenes in the county. And those members of that board are going to be collecting damage assessments throughout the county. They're out and about, they're talking to affected landowners. And a lot of times we're looking at production agriculture, but also in the sense of EFRP, we're also needing to look at natural resources, including forestry. After the county emergency board members, the employees there at the different agencies sort of gather those details, they present that information to our county committee members. And I've got a little flyer here just in case folks aren't familiar. FSA has a county committee in each of the 64 county offices. Those are locally elected individuals. They have to own land or be active participants in FSA farm programs in order to be an eligible candidate for the election or to vote in the election. But I like to refer to this as a measure of common sense in our programs because it's locally elected farmers that our farmers appoint through an election process to this board. So they're the ones who really look over the damage, gather information from their neighbors and communities, and then make that recommendation to the state committee of whether the damage meets the requirements for implementation of EFRP. And once that recommendation is submitted, it goes through to the state level and then on to the national level. In my experience, anytime a county committee has requested implementation, the state and national level are generally in support of that because we have local folks who know what's going on in their community to send up those recommendations. But this is one way that individuals can be involved in their community when disaster occurs, is making connection with your county office and particularly your county committee. Once the sign up has been authorized, producers or landowners should contact their FSA office. And even before the disaster has been authorized, it's important for FSA to gather that information and understand how many requests could be coming. So Anytime that natural disaster impacts private forest land, contact your local FSA office, let them know what sort of damage you have, and they can even accept an application from you. Even if the sign up hasn't started, we should be able to still receive an application just to have it pending in the system in case or in hopes of that sign up being authorized for your disaster. Once a disaster event is approved for EFRP, then producers would sign up with their FSA county office during the advertised sign up period. FSA maintains farm records. I know a lot of our woodland owners may not think that that applies to them, but we use that just as a record keeping system for all USDA programs. You get a farm number to apply for NRCS's EQIP program, or you get a farm number to apply for FSA programs. In this case, it could be all woodland, but we're still going to establish a farm serial number and FSA's records. We're going to need the landowner's names, proof of ownership of your land, such as a deed, land contract, that type of evidence. We're going to need to know what practices you want to implement on that land for the EFRP, and we're going to need a map. One of the trickiest things about establishing farms for woodlands is being able to identify those boundaries on our aerial imagery. Sometimes the local PBA office can be helpful in providing a map. Also, we refer to a lot of plats or surveys. So if you have those type things that you can take into the FSA office, it's going to help them get the farm record established correctly for your woodland boundaries, which is very important when you're participating in a woodland program. The current event for Laurel County and Pulaski County is the sign up event, or the sign up for that event is ongoing now through August 29th. If you have non-industrial private forest land in Pulaski County, you can contact the Somerset office, or Laurel County, the London office, and I have both of those addresses, phone numbers, and contact info there on the screen. The deadline is August 29th to apply for those for the May 16th tornado that affected our area. So once we receive those applications in the office, and this is kind of the phase we're to here in our current sign up, we're referring those applications to the NRCS or Forestry Service staff that are assigned as the technical assistance provider for the program. In this instance, NRCS is doing most of our work for the current sign up, but it could either be NRCS or Forest Service forestry staff assigned to be the technical service provider. We will refer those applications to the forester that's assigned. And then, as I said, technical assistance could be provided through state forestry agencies, and that is basically set up through the national and state level for each sign up. Those decisions are made. The technical assistance and planning through that agency will include an on-site visit to verify the extent of the damage and sort of evaluate how feasible it is to implement the practices we have to offer on the applicant's land. And then the technical agency will provide that written report back to FSA, a determination of the practices, the extent needed. We call that a needs determination, so that we can take that conservation restoration plan and turn it into a cost share agreement to present to the producer. The FSA County Committee will review each of those requests, reviewing also the needs determination completed by the technical service provider, and determine if it qualifies for approval and notify the applicant of approval, so that they'll know up front basically how much cost share is available for the practices that have been recommended. And at that point, the applicant can decide if they want to move forward with the program. They would receive this approval letter and a form that they can sign and return within 15 days to basically say, I'll take it, let's move forward. And then we move into actually implementing those practices. So I'm going to ask John to pick up from here and talk to you a little more about the practices that are most common for this tornado event.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. So for this one, it's really interesting. Just the incredible amount of damage that's happened, not just on private forest land, but a big chunk through the Daniel Boone. And so through an agreement that we currently have with NRCS, we engaged first with some of the foresters that are working on some of the initial restoration work on the Daniel Boone. And we kind of came up with a standard package of practices that make sense. They're ecologically sound. They're going to drive these damaged forests very quickly towards recovery, with the new forests regenerating and growing out over the next 5 to 10 years before we'll need to do any additional follow up on those. And really just tailoring these practices and making them so it's something that each individual landowner can feasibly put on the ground. So they're not overly complicated, overly technical. Just a list of some of the common practices that we're using in that standard package would be woody residue treatment, forest stand improvement, and obstruction removal. And I'll get into a little bit on each one. So with the tornadoes that happened out in the western part of the state a few years ago, we had an emergency EQIP program where we utilized woody residue treatment primarily. So what we're looking at is all the material that's down already. So uprooted trees that are snapped in half, trees that still may have roots in the ground, but they're under tension. There's in some places 10 to 15 feet deep slash that's out there. It's very dangerous to get in there. As we're doing these assessments, we're really not getting into that material. There's still a lot of material that we hear that's popping and coming down. So the first step is to just make it safe. Make it safe for landowners to be able to access their land again, and also get a lot of that material down to where it's going to naturally degrade away and get that next forest regenerating. And how we're primarily looking at doing this treatment is with some mastication equipment. So doing some chipping and some mulching, bringing the right pieces of equipment in to suit slope and some of the limitations that we see out there, size of material, and really just releasing that tension, getting it open back up again, and getting just access regained. Forest stand improvement is another practice that we are looking to implement, and this is more from a silvicultural standpoint. So we're going to use forest stand improvement more for removing of damaged trees, but our hope is to really utilize natural regeneration as much as we can to get this next forest going. So there is still enough standing trees on most of the sites that are, even if they are severely damaged, they could definitely be the seed source for that next forest, as well as a lot of the stuff that's going to sprout back or may already have seed in the seed bed there. But so with forest stand improvement, we're really looking at removing trees that we don't want to have be those mother trees in the new stand, and definitely looking at removing severely damaged and hazard trees in places where that needs to happen. We're also very conscious about wildfire and the increase in wildfire risk that's within the scar of the tornado. So doing this in a way to where we're reducing that and mitigating that risk. Also, if there's places that could attract or harbor additional forest pests, we want to make sure that we're on the front end of that and really getting ahead and taking those trees out. So once it's safe to get into the site after we do those woody residue treatment practices and we're looking at removing individual trees, marking of those trees will be done by one of our NRCS foresters or myself. So landowners will know exactly what trees to take out and what trees to retain. Obstruction removal is one just generally after a tornado could be used to remove damaged buildings or structures, vegetation, a lot of light debris, sometimes heavy debris. I've seen some very interesting things that have been blown into forest land from unknown sources. So just removal of that debris. How we're using it in this program is it's really the first step is to get access back. So we're looking at existing forest roads and trails, trees that have come down across the roads. Again, sometimes very, very deep with a lot of big material. Is we have to remove all that material down to the roadbed. If there's erosion that needs to happen, erosion control that needs to happen on those roads because of the storm, how that impacted the road itself, just getting access back so we can even get onto the site to bring equipment in to do the initial work and then to do the follow-up work, which in this case, a lot of the follow-up work that'll have to happen in the next 1 to 2 years is really looking at invasive species control. There's even on forests that didn't have a lot of invasive species, and I know a lot of the landowners that we're working with have already implemented a tremendous amount of conservation programs, either on their own with partnership with Kentucky Division of Forestry, or through EQIP, or sometimes even a CSP, Conservation Stewardship Program, contract with NRCS. So they've already got a leg up on that invasive species load. But you know what those species are really looking at, especially the tree of heaven, a polonium, mimosa tree, looking at a lot of stilt grass. Those are the more common ones that I've been seeing. Autumn olive. They're in the woods and they're waiting for their chance to get that big gap of light, which normally would happen, you know, with either what we saw with emerald ash borer coming through and punching big gaps in the canopy. And this, when the canopy is completely removed, those invasive species really have that leg up. So we're looking at trying to take them back as best as we can, and getting into a stand without having that mechanical treatment that's done to make it safe to get in there, and having the roads open back up again to even access that site. It's completely infeasible to even think about going in and doing some chemical treatments for tree of heaven, or any of those other invasives. So this is just a really critical practice right up front that we're utilizing. So on the technical assistance and planning part, so what we're doing as foresters is we're providing that implementation support to the landowner. So not only are we looking at this is what you need to do to bring your woods back into a state to where it's going to be growing that future forest, but we're going to be looking at what's the right piece of equipment to use, what vendors or contractors have that equipment available. And then supporting that practice installation to make sure that the NRCS conservation practice standards are met, as well as the state forest agency standards. So we're meeting both NRCS and KDF, especially when we're doing road work. We want to make sure that all those BMPs are in place. And then once the work's done, then we're going to be going back out and certifying that the practices were installed, that they're going to be functional, and that's really I think the big question that we'll face when we really get into this work is when do we say we're done? You know, it doesn't have to look like a park. Like I said, we're looking at we're making it safe. We're getting it to a point to where that future forest is going to be able to establish itself. So at what point do we meet that? And so that's where we're going to be on the ground a lot while implementation is happening, just tracking that to make sure that, okay, you've reached a point now, we're calling it good, and we're just going to let it grow out so we can manage it into the future. So while NRCS and FSA we don't carry a list of contractors or vendors. If there is anybody that's on the presentation today or picks this up and has an interest in has availability to that kind of equipment that we're really looking at, either our master loggers, excavator companies. What we're looking at is kind of larger or medium-sized excavators that have mulcher heads on them. There's a fair number of them around in the area, but I know that's the kind of equipment that we can be bringing in. We're also, in some places, might be looking for 500 to 600 horsepower ground-driven forestry mulching equipment, which is kind of a specialty. It's down south, southern states with their more of a pine type of forestry system, or out west with like fuels mitigation work. That equipment's, I wouldn't say readily available, but it's out there. There may be some opportunities for that. Our Pulaski County Conservation District is maintaining that list. And so contacting either Kara or John here at the Pulaski County Conservation District, and the numbers up there to get your name on that list. And then once you've called and said, hey, I'm interested in doing this type of work, then one of the days while I'm down here, take you out to a landowner. We have a few landowners that have graciously opened up their properties to be places that we can bring contractors to, just so you can see on the ground what we're up against, and get a feeling for just kind of how many hours is it going to take with the equipment that you got, and just talk through a lot of those things. So reporting requirements. So after completion, then the participant must complete, sign, and submit to FSA and the FSA 848B form, and submitting records. So because this is a lot of our landowners that I said are within the path may have already been familiar with NRCS and the EQIP program, where we pay a straight rate for that practice. This is a true cost share type program. So submitting invoices, receipts, canceled checks, costs of labor, equipment costs, and material costs. And then once those are submitted, then local forester will review the completed restoration. And at that point, then FSA will issue that cost share reimbursement based on the eligible costs incurred for restoration. With any of these conservation practices that we put out there, we're really trying to set every landowner up for success to grow that forest out. And part of that success is that operations and maintenance. So each one of these practices have what we call as a practice lifespan. So the most common one for those woody residue treatment and forest stand improvement is that 10-year lifespan. There's a chance that you would have to refund the cost share through this program if those practices are destroyed or not properly maintained. What could occur, there's instances of this, and I'll just say in other states that we're aware sometimes that forest that's on the edge of that crop field, sometimes we'll do the EFRP. We'll make sure that it's growing back as a forest. But then if the landowner decides, hey, well, I'm just going to take that 5 acres, grub out all those stumps and turn it into cropland, then it's a land use change. So that would be destroying those practices. So then there would be a requirement to refund the money that you received to restore the forest, because it's no longer forest. If land is voluntarily sold or relinquished and the new owner does not accept responsibility for maintaining those practices, then there could be a situation where a refund would be needed. So for additional resources, there's a fantastic QR code there with a cute little dinosaur on it, and you can click that as well as the website.
Any questions you can direct to me at the Somerset office, particularly if you're in the Pulaski County area or if you're outside of the Pulaski McCreary area. And looking to find your service center. The farmers.gov website does include program information about many of the NRCS and FSA programs, but also an office locator to help you find your local service center. Thank you all so much for having us, and we'll certainly stay on for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate all of that. And we did have a couple of questions in the chat pod that I was noticing. So one was, are you cut stumping trees with and without spraying stumps on seed trees?
Stump. So I'll take it for just for the invasive species control. And this is one thing that I really wrestle around with, because to properly treat that tree ahead, and we all know that the best way about it would be to do some kind of basal bark spray or a stem injection, especially some of the size that we're looking at. Cut stump would also be another one for that smaller material. It's absolutely infeasible to even get in there to do those types of treatments. So a lot of what we're looking at for the invasive control is going to be a lot of follow-up, foliar spraying. So if this treatment if the mastication came through and happened, say this fall into early winter, then with that next flush of growth next spring and summer, that's when we would be looking at really getting after a foliar treatment, which is fully supported, and we're writing that into the program. So those dollars are something that's cost share available through this program.
They're also wanting to know if you sprayed unwanted trees of less value, kind of like a TSI, FSI practice.
I think a lot of it's just going to be mechanical. There's already so much material that's going to be down anyways. And with those hazard trees, especially, is just getting them on the ground. That's what we're going to be looking at. So either knocking them over with an excavator, once we can get in there and see what they are, or falling them, just controlled falling.
So are they left or are they removed from the
they're going to be so damaged, they're just going to be left. Some of them are going to be left for standing as very valuable for wildlife snags. Some of them have I've seen stuff that's tops blowed out, split down into 4 different pieces that are all laid out. It's there's going to be a lot of wildlife value to some of those, but if there are if we do run into where we're taking out, say, a lot of the lower quality trees that we don't want to have in there, but we know we're going to have a lot of sprouting off of them because of we may recommend a chemical treatment just to reduce the sprouting of those.
I think you bring up a good point, John. It's really kind of hard to even see what you got until you kind of get in there and get that stuff on the ground and make things safe, for sure. So, yeah. And really good to hear about the follow-up practices. That's an important part with invasive plants. Now, I can't thank you all enough, really, Lindsey and John. Appreciate the work you do for our woodland owners and our landowners here in Kentucky. Service you provide for them like we do here. But thank you for your information, and thanks for being there to help them out, in this time of emergency. It's really it's nice to have some support when they're probably like, what do I do?
Yeah, I mean, you've got all this downed timber and everything, and you're like, where do I go? How do I start? And that's to me what From the Woods today is, to kind of help you along that process to learn what the possibilities are out there. So we greatly appreciate you both being on.
Yeah. And I'll encourage our viewers, whether you're live with us now or catching the recording, please, if you know people could benefit from this opportunity, share that information with them, right? It doesn't do any good if people don't find out about this. So help us spread that word.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good deal. All right, Lindsey and John, I'm sure we'll have you all back at some point in the future. And we thank you so much for being with us. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Good stuff. Yeah. Good work they're doing.
Now we have Dr. Crocker coming on.
Yay! Hello, how's it going, everyone?
How are you?
What's bugging my tree today, Dr. Crocker?
Oh, there's always something new that's popping up on our trees. And right now for us, we're just starting to hit the end of summer, maybe a few like cooler days as we move into fall. And I'm going to talk about a tree disease that is something that it's here, but we'll start to really notice it this time of year, and that's bacterial leaf scorch.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All right. You can share with
Yeah.
no, we appreciate
Yeah,
you,
no,
Dr.
I
Crocker.
know.
No, you're right. We do get lots of questions about these, and people may be seeing them in their landscape. So, you providing this information is really important. So thank you for that, really.
We agree.
Yeah, and this is one that's huge in our area. Like I think central bluegrass, northern Kentucky has a ton of bacterial leaf scorch. Normally it's going to stay in the urban areas, but I think it's something important to be on the lookout for just because we have so much of it.
Okay.
Looking
Looking
forward.
forward to it.
All right, well, I'll get started then. And as always, I hate to be the bearer of bad news on these what's bugging my tree, but this is something that I think a lot of you have probably seen before, just because it is really common in our area. So if you are noticing your oak trees turning brown in the late summer and their leaves being scorched from the outside edges in, it could be bacterial leaf scorch, which is a disease common in our area that causes dead leaves, dead shoots, dieback, and tree death over time. So today we're going to talk about bacterial leaf scorch, what it is, potential lookalikes, and what it means for your trees. So what is bacterial leaf scorch? It's a tree disease that's caused by a bacterium, Xylella fastidiosa. This gets in the vascular system of the tree and it impacts water flow. So specifically, you've got this bacterium in there. It's clogging up the xylem, which are the tissues that are responsible for the flow of water in that tree. So if it's gumming that up, it's going to prevent the flow of water and effectively strangle the tree from the inside, but it does this little by little over time. So while those symptoms might come on all at once and we notice them this time of year in the late summer, early fall, that is something that's going to progressively get worse year after year. So these symptoms are what you might expect for a tree under severe water stress. So it might look something like a tree that's been experiencing a severe drought or has had the flow of water in it compromised for other reasons. And you can see that in this picture. It really looks scorched and is distinctive this time of year, different from some other patterns of dead leaf tissue that we might see earlier in the year. This is a pathogen that's being spread around by insects. The bacteria can be spread from tree to tree by these small sap-sucking insects like leafhoppers and tree hoppers and spittlebugs. Unfortunately, it's not really something you can control, and we have no shortage of insects that are spreading tree to tree. However, this also seems to be something that's really associated with tree stress. So while it is really common in our environment, the trees that are going to be most susceptible to this problem are going to be those that are already stressed in some way. And I most often see these symptoms on red oaks, especially stressed red oaks in more urban settings, your street trees and your landscape trees, pin oaks, any type of red oak. You will also see this on all sorts of different other species. So this is a walnut with some of these issues. You might see it on maples and sycamores and many others. So here are just some other pictures of what it might look like on some different species, from ginkgo to sweet gum to maple. Less common than on red oaks, but something you might see anyways. In fact, the same bacterium that causes bacterial leaf scorch causes disease on hundreds of other plants, including some agriculturally important ones, and you might know it by another name on different crop plants. So if you've heard of Pierce's disease of grapes, it's going to be the same pathogen, just causing a slightly different disease in a different host plant. So What does this look like? Here's a quick video that I took last year of some red oak with these symptoms. You'll first see these symptoms in late summer and they'll get worse through the fall. Trees might leaf out totally normally in the spring, look great up until late summer. And I think it kind of goes with the really hot temperatures and then drier conditions, and that leaf browning can come on suddenly. Now, when we have really wet weather, that might be really delayed, or we might not even notice it as much. But if we have a really hot, dry late summer, I think you're going to see more of these symptoms. So this leaf, you can see those classic symptoms where the leaf is browning from the outside edges in. It's a very distinctive form of scorch, but it can look different on different host plants. So this is on a red oak species. On white oak, it might look a little different. Still some of that scorching from the outside edges in, but more of this interveinal pattern, maybe a yellow halo around it. In addition, leaves with these symptoms might be held on the tree for, dead leaves held on the tree, or they might drop early. And you'll wonder, why did my tree lose its leaves so early? Why did it go brown so early? It could be this. So typically early on in an infection, you'll see one or a few branches initially showing these symptoms, and this is going to progress over time. So every year you might see a little bit more. So the symptoms look like they're happening on all at once, but really this is going to play out over several years. And the timelines for that, I think, can depend on the tree species we're talking about, how good health is it in, what are the environmental conditions like, has it been really droughty, that kind of thing. So instead of killing the tree really rapidly, over the course of a few weeks or a month, what you're going to see is the symptoms come on, but then the next year it still looks okay when it leaves out. And then towards the end of the summer, you're going to see it decline again, and that's going to get progressively worse until the tree dies. I say that because it's significant in that you can have some other diseases that have a really different pattern of rolling out that we want to distinguish between. So potential lookalikes to bacterial leaf scorch. One that you'll sometimes see would be just environmental scorch. So, something happens and you get those same kind of scorch symptoms on the leaves just due to environmental conditions. So in the winter, or you might see this in, after kind of really harsh winter conditions on evergreen trees, their leaves might be scorched from the outside edges in on your hollies or your southern magnolias. On the other end, you might see dead leaf patterns that are kind of like this after a really severe drought or heat stress. So since that scorch symptom is just showing you insufficient water flow in trees, a lot of other things can also cause it if they're impacting water flow. But one disease that we really do want to distinguish between is oak wilt. That is another vascular pathogen. So it's kind of doing the same types of things. It's living in the vascular system, cutting off the flow of water. But in this case, it happens really fast. And you'll see this sudden browning that impacts the whole tree and then tree death over a really short period of time. Oak wilt is something that we have in our area, but we don't have nearly as much of as we do bacterial leaf scorch. But it's something we want to be on the lookout, because if we do find oak wilt, if you find oak wilt, you probably want to protect any nearby trees from being infected as well, because it can spread out from a local center. Versus with bacterial leaf scorch, that's probably less of a concern just because it's in a lot of different places. Oak wilt is something you'd really want to catch because it can cause such rapid tree death. So in order to distinguish those two, you can both consider, how fast is this happening, but there are laboratory diagnostic tests that would distinguish between them. Unfortunately, you can't really do that in the field. It's something that you need to send in samples to our plant diagnostic lab to figure out what you've got and what you're seeing. So when it comes to management for bacterial leaf scorch, unfortunately, there's no cure. So trees that are infected will continue to decline little by little over time until they die. And you'll especially see this in urban areas. Here's a tree with some of those classic symptoms. I don't know if this tree has bacterial leaf scorch, but you see a lot of trees that look like this maybe in the summer, early in the year. And then when you come back in the fall, you can see those classic bacterial leaf scorch symptoms, and it's just going to decline little by little over time. Not only is that something that you can't really improve, it's going to continue to get worse, but a potential risk for that homeowner who's right there. So what can you do? You can greatly extend the life of trees by promoting their health and reducing the likelihood of infection by keeping trees healthy. Even relatively minor things like watering trees, especially during droughts and really hot, dry periods, can assist your trees. Also, because those branches are dying over time and that tree is dying back little by little, you want to monitor those trees and make sure to prune any branches if they're in an urban area or a place where there'd be an issue when they fall, because that's likely to happen with bacterial leaf scorch. There are some antibiotic injection options that can be done by arborists to combat bacterial leaf scorch, but I would say that they don't cure the infection as much as ideally push it back some and would need to be repeated regularly. If you have a lot of bacterial leaf scorch in your area, it could be worth planting trees that are known to be less susceptible in the future, or just avoiding some of the trees that get the most issues like pin oaks, that I see a lot of this with. So here you can just see one of those injection options. This is actually a different species, but doing a similar type of injection where you drill into the trees and inject directly into them. So thanks for joining me today and learning a little bit more about bacterial leaf scorch. If you want to learn more, we have additional resources online and you can reach out with questions. So hopefully that answered all of your bacterial leaf scorch questions, and nobody sees this. I will say that this year has been so wet, right? We have gotten so much rain this year that I've seen a lot fewer symptoms. At this point last year, I was seeing more bacterial leaf scorch. That's not to say that it's not there. It's not to say that it is not going to cause problems, or if we hit a dry period, we might see a lot more of it all of a sudden. I think it's just related to that water flow. And if what this is doing is restricting water flow and we don't have as much water, it's going to be more severe. If it restricts water flow, but there's tons of water, it's going to be less problematic.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, that is a booger, that Ellen, that we hear about, on a regular basis for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully you don't have any. But if you do see these symptoms, you now have some resources to kind of look into. We do really want to not see oak wilt. So I would much rather see bacterial leaf scorch. While for an individual tree, they're both death sentences, oak wilt has a much bigger risk of like locally causing those pockets of death, moving tree to tree, and happens much faster. So it's something that hopefully we're not seeing. If you do see something that looks like it, you can definitely reach out and hopefully we can get a sample to find out.
Yeah, no doubt.
But
And
once you find it, your tree's always going to have it. It's not until it dies.
Bacterial leaf scorch, yes.
Okay.
To my knowledge, that is how that will proceed. And again, you can prolong its life. You can do a lot with management, but that is going to be with the tree.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being.
Yes, as always, appreciate the work you do, Ellen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. All right. Well, we learned
a lot today.
We did, really. We had a first-time guest. Really appreciate Lindsey New being with us from Farm Service Agency, and John Schultz. Always great having Dr. Crocker talking about bacterial leaf scorch this time. But hey, but people need to know this stuff.
They
right?
do, and and that's what we're here for, to let you know about things, different forestry topics. And if you go to fromthewoodstoday.com, you can learn about, I don't know, over 250 different topics because every show we've ever done is right there for you. So, and also there is a survey there that you can take. And if you find,
And I was going to say, if there's a topic that you're looking for and you don't
please.
find on there, let us know, right? Because if you're curious about it, or if you're dealing with something on your property, or somebody you're working with, there's a good chance others here in the state are as well. So if we can help you, we might be able to help others here in Kentucky. And that's what we're trying to do, help each of you all be good stewards of our woodland and wildlife resources and connect you to all the programs and organizations there to help you do that. So.
And you have to think about it too. I get 2 guests per week. We have a show every week, minus like 2 weeks of the year. So I need those topics too. So, bring them in. Let us know.
Renee.
Yeah, help me out. Help me out. Let me know what you want to know about. That's what we're here for, really.
Yeah, we want to be relevant to you all and your needs. So thank you.
Definitely.
Yep.
So we will see you all next week, unless you have anything else to say, Billy. You look like
I'm good. No, I was just going to, thank those that have been with us, and I look forward to seeing you all who are going to be with us on the Woodland on a Short Course this Saturday. And so, all right, take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
From the woods today. From the woods today.